Welcome to Crossroad Connection. We're speaking out for those left unheard. My name is David Scheringa, the host of your program. I'm the president of Crossroad Bible Institute. Did you know that the majority of people in prison suffer from some sort of disability? And so we are very interested in that important topic, and I have really an expert in that topic with me today, Mark Stevenson. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark is the Director of Disability Concerns, which is a ministry, a joint ministry of the Christian Reformed Church in North America and the Reformed Church in America, and I'm sure other churches as well are involved. And you've been doing that for how long now?
It's been almost 8 years that I've been serving as the Director of Disability Concerns. Before that, I served 2 churches as a pastor.
And then you found your way to disability concerns. Now,
Yeah.
if just for our viewers' sake, I know the history, but they don't. How did you get an interest in people with disabilities?
When I was in seminary at Calvin Seminary here in Grand Rapids, our oldest daughter was born extremely prematurely during my senior year. And she spent 6.5 months in the hospital. Her name is Nicole. She experienced a wide variety of complications, and now she's almost 26 years old and lives with severe multiple disabilities. So I like to tell people that God really used her to lead me and my wife to the callings that we have today, because I was serving as a pastor and now Director of Disability Concerns. My wife is trained as a German teacher and then went back and got training in special education, and now she's in her 13th year of teaching as a special education teacher.
So because of your daughter, both of you sort of recalibrated your careers
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
into
absolutely.
that direction.
Yeah.
Was it difficult at first because of, wow, you have other children and, you see people with kids all the time and everybody, is functioning in a different way? Was it like, wow, what are we doing here? God, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a process, because when Nicole was first born, then the concerns were, will she live or will she die? Because she was experiencing so many really severe complications. And then as she continued month by month at the hospital, it was just a grueling time.
How long was she in the hospital?
6.5 months.
Wow.
So that time lasted, for a long time. So a lot of trips back and forth to the hospital, juggling, and then finally getting her home. And really at that point, not knowing what the future outcomes might be.
Mm-hmm.
She had brain scans done, and we talked with a neurologist who said, well, the area of her brain that was most severely affected by a brain hemorrhage was the speech part of her brain. He said it could be that she'll have almost no verbal abilities at all. It could be that she'll just have difficulty learning a foreign language. As it turns out, her language abilities severely affected. She does not use any words at all for communication. And we're not sure, but we don't think that she understands very many words either.
Wow. So I don't want to dwell on this, but just, how do you communicate with her?
There's a lot of other communication besides words. I was trained as a man of the word, to preach the word and teach the word. And so you miss that verbal communication, but smiles, hugs.
You can see her response.
Oh, there's all kinds of other ways that we communicate. They talk about verbal communication being only a portion of all that we communicate. So there's all kinds of other things that we can do, and that she can let us know if she's happy, sad, frustrated. As you get to know somebody, you can certainly understand some of what's going on.
Just to keep it on the personal level, here you have a daughter with severe disabilities, and then you're a minister of the church. So what did you begin to discover about how the church relates to people with disabilities?
That was also a gradual process. What we found first was in the church that we were at, they were just extraordinarily gracious with us and helpful. People did our laundry when Nicole was in the hospital. They took care of our lawn. They brought us meals. So we were really cared for well during that time.
Which church was that?
Hope Christian Reformed Church in Granville.
Okay.
Good folks. But then as time went on, after Nicole came home, because she lived with such severe disabilities and medical issues, people were frightened about actually helping us out with child care. And I understand that, but that became a real need for us because life was so intense for Bev and my wife Bev and me that you think, okay, how are we going to have a little bit of time just with the two of us? And that was very difficult for that to happen. And I don't blame the folks at Hope Church or any other church that we were a part of, but it becomes much more challenging when you have a child who has really severe disabilities and significant medical needs that people just don't feel comfortable actually taking care of a child, at least not a child like Nicole's. And so then it became a matter of finding other folks to help us once in a while with child care, and we actually received help from the government for that through what was called a Medicaid waiver. But I could say more about the church and people with disabilities. Nicole certainly was warmly welcomed by people when we could finally start bringing her to church. And one of my favorite stories that I like to tell about her is that as she got older in a church that I was serving, she tended to make a little bit of noise during the worship service, and that isn't always acceptable in churches. So sometimes she would clap, or sometimes she would just
Was that when you had a good point in your sermon?
Right. I always tell people, hey, nobody else claps for me when I preach, so it was great having her do that.
But she'd have these unexpected eruptions
sometimes,
of noise.
And it wasn't, angry. It was pleasant, or sometimes she'd vocalize, just make these pleasant sounds. But people, one person came to me and said that they found that to be distracting. So my wife, because I was in the front of church, my wife did what she could to help Nicole stay more quiet, and we even put a sock in her hand so that when she clapped, it would be muffled. But then here's the really interesting part. She quieted down some, but that was just her part of her expression of worship. But then eventually she moved into a group home, and so we didn't have her there on Sunday mornings while I was leading worship. And then we had a number of people tell us how much they missed Nicole's presence in worship.
Wow.
And she, in many ways, was a cheerleader for all of us about how good it is to be there in the presence of God, worshiping God and being with his people.
Because these conservative folks don't make much noise in worship, right?
No, they don't. And then once in a while, we'd start singing a song, and she'd put her hands in the air and go, woo, woo, like that. And there aren't a lot of...
she had wormed away in their hearts.
Oh, absolutely.
Without them even knowing it.
Absolutely.
So that must have taught you something about that there's a place for everyone, and everyone has a place in the church. Was that where that thought kind of started?
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the theme that we use for our ministry is everybody belongs, everybody serves. Mm-hmm. And the everybody serves part is, I think, the thing that lots of folks stumble over if they don't live with disabilities themselves or have a loved one with a disability. They see the limitations of people and have a hard time seeing that somebody who might be limited in one way or another also has gifts.
Right.
So especially with somebody like our daughter who has severe multiple disabilities, when you first meet her, it's very hard to know how she might be gifted. But, for us, we can see that. We can see that in the worship. And so now at the church where we worship, I'm not the lead pastor there. We have another person who leads the worship services, but people appreciate her presence there for that same reason, because she's like a cheerleader for us in worship and how good it is to be there in God's presence.
That is that's a beautiful thing. We have about 6,000 volunteers all across all over the world and so forth, but we have about 500 volunteers in this building where the TV studio is, who process the lessons and all of that. And we have a number of people with disabilities that are here too. Okay. Yeah. And we can find a job for them too. Yeah. They can usually do a lot more than you thought, but they bring so much joy into the room, and into the facility. People tell me that when they come in, they sense the Holy Spirit here. But I believe it's those folks that have a lot to do with that, because they have a joy and they have a desire to be there. Obviously, it's important to them. this is a far cry, isn't it, from treating people with disabilities as sort of people to be pitied and to help them in a sense of that we're over them. But I think what I hear you saying is teaching the church to see people with disabilities as equals, image bearers of God.
Absolutely. Yep.
That we benefit from as much as they benefit from us. Is that an overstatement?
Oh no, we like to talk about, if we say everybody belongs, everybody serves, there really is no we and they. It's all us. We're all people of God. We're all made in God's image. And so that means then that we all serve him together in different ways. And it's up to the church then to make sure that as people get involved in the community, that the church makes sure that that person can get in the door, can use the bathroom, can use the whole building, the facilities. That's the most basic level of physical accessibility. That people can read the bulletin because the print is large print, or there's large print available. That they can see what's on the screen, that kind of thing. That still is a pretty basic level, but the most important is the heart level, our attitude, that we move in kind of a basic continuum, that we move from pity to care. But if we stop at care, then it's just a matter of care for. It's just like
it's still one way.
It's all one way. That we move to the level of friendship and co-laborer. That we
probably the lowest level is just ignoring.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, people with disabilities used to get locked up in
yes,
in attics,
That's
right? So it went from ignorance to pity to care to what's next?
Friendship
and
co-laborer.
And co-laborer. Wow, is you need a chart for that, I think.
Oh, it's already made, and
is it?
And those are the 5 parts, right there.
Okay, well, I'm sure that they're going to show it right here on the show as well.
Okay, yeah.
After the break, we want to talk about this quite prestigious award that you just received.
Oh, sure, I'd love to.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Correcting Bible study lessons is crucial to helping inmates. To partner with CBI in this safe and secure role, please visit us at cbi.fm on the web.
Welcome back to Crossroad Connection. My name is David Schuring. I'm in the studio here today with Rev Mark Stevenson, who's the Director of Disability Concerns. And we're having a lively conversation here today about how the church can benefit by caring for, but especially partnering with people with disabilities. And now, Mark, just recently, you received a pretty prestigious award. You have the letter here, and you'll be going to a particular meeting and receiving that. But this is the Bethesda. Well, you tell me the Bethesda 2014 Christian Service Award in recognition of your leadership and ministry among people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
That's it's well deserved. You and I have known each other for a long, long time, and your development in this position has just been remarkable. And to get this recognition is well deserved. We don't do it for recognition, but what's nice about it is that it demonstrates, at least to me, that the church is awakening to what you're trying to do.
Right.
So it's not so much, a pat on the head to an individual, but it's recognizing the importance and the strides that we are making, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about the award.
Okay. Well, I don't know a lot about the award because I haven't been at the ceremony yet. That's not till September. But Bethesda Lutheran Communities has been around for a long time already, mainly based in Wisconsin. And it's a large ministry that has group homes, supportive
Is that what the
employment.
Wisconsin Lutheran Church, or is it much broader than that?
I don't know which Lutheran church they're part of. Maybe
must be bigger than that. Yeah,
could be. I don't know. But anyway, so it's a large ministry, many staff, many group homes, and so on.
Probably UCLA, yeah.
And they serve primarily people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in their ministry. And the award, the Christian Service Award, has been something that's been happening since 1987. And at first it was used to celebrate Lutherans who did things that they thought were that were really great, that they appreciated in
For
terms of
people with
ministry.
disabilities, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But then a few years ago, they broadened that and allowed people like us who are not Lutherans also to receive the award.
Wow.
So that was, it was just a great honor because the letter came in the mail, totally unexpected, out of the blue.
Really? You
Yeah,
didn't
I had no
apply for
idea.
this?
I had no idea that this was coming. And then one day the letter showed up and I was so excited. And of course I called my wife right away to tell her about it. And then, it was just a really real honor, because not only is it an honor because I have so much respect for Bethesda Lutheran communities. I've known about them for a long time, but also some previous award recipients. Your listeners may know some of these names: Barbara Newman, Dr. Jeff McNair, who's a special education professor at California Baptist University; Nella Eitflucht, who was the
Nell
director
Eitflucht?
of Friendship.
Yeah,
She was
right.
director of
Yes,
Friendship.
I know that name.
Yeah. So some great folks who have done some really, really good work over the years. So to be associated in that company is a real honor also.
Well, just a wonderful thing. Tell us a little bit about the fact that not that long ago a partnership was formed with the Christian Reformed Church and the Reformed Church in America in the area of disability. So there's one office, 2 point persons, one here, one in the RCA, but you guys have a joint ministry, right? And so
Right.
now we're talking about a disability ministry that's reaching like 2,000 churches.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and how's
Okay.
it going?
Well, about 5-6 years ago, the Reformed Church in America approached us and said, we are interested in finding a way that we can work together in disability ministry, because they recognize that the CRC has been involved in this ministry for a long time already.
And I think they
So-
sensed that we were kind of ahead of the ball on it, huh?
Yeah, and ahead of most denominations. It's amazing to me, and I'm thrilled to be able to serve as Director of Disability Concerns for the Christian Reformed Church, and that the CRC is willing to devote a lot of resources toward this ministry. So anyway, so the RCA came to us and said, we'd like to find a way to partner together. So we came up with a partnership agreement. And then they hired a staff person who started about 4.5 years ago. His name is Reverend Terry DeYoung. And so Terry and I work very closely together. We publish a newsletter together. We published a book last year called Inclusion Handbook, which is available from Faith Alive Christian Resources. It's a basic resource for churches to learn what do we do to make sure that we are the kind of welcoming community that God wants our church to be. We do conferences together, so there's a variety of different ways that we work together, and it's been a great partnership for the CRC and the RCA. It's benefited both of our denominations.
Well, it seems like it's a good stewardship too, because you share a newsletter, you share conferences, you share resources,
Right.
and so much more can be used to actually help people than to keep up some sort of administrative facility or things like that. So
Right.
that's a
Right.
beautiful thing. Maybe you
Yeah.
guys have to find other churches, because you said it's rare for denominations to devote time to this.
Yeah.
Maybe you got to find other denominations to join in on this, huh?
Yeah, well, we do find ways to partner with other denominations and ministries too, but not quite as close as this connection between the CRC and RCA Disability Concerns. But yeah, we keep looking at other and finding ways to connect with other ministries.
How is the church doing when it comes to caring for people and partnering with people with disabilities?
That really varies, of course, depending on the individual congregation.
I mean, I was in a church not too long ago for a funeral, and apparently the church has never had to do any remodeling, so it was like, well, my dad is in a wheelchair now and stuff like that, and to get him downstairs, 3 men had to carry him.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah.
Because there was no elevator, there was...
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I was going to talk about.
You know what I'm
that-
saying about it? And the fact is that it seems like, without being, it seems like unless you have a new building or you remodel the building and the government forces you to do things, You know,
It's not just the government forcing. There's a lot of churches that have made that decision that we are not going to exclude people just because they use a wheelchair. A lot of churches, in fact, at least in the CRC, we do a survey every year, and over 80% of Christian Reformed church buildings, people can get in the building. If they use a wheelchair, they can use the bathroom. They have a place to go in the
Right.
sanctuary. So
there's a water fountain high enough for them to use.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that basic level of physical accessibility is pretty good in most Christian Reformed churches. I can't speak for other denominations.
Okay.
But I'm really thankful for that. But those other kinds of things that we're talking about in terms of communication and tools
We're
for
doing
communication.
okay at the acceptance and the care, but we have a long ways to go yet in the partnering, you're thinking.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of our own attitudes, because it's so easy to see someone and make a judgment about what he or she can and cannot do based on just that first impression.
Right.
And that's where we really need to work at our hearts and say, whoa, I need to learn to get to know this person, to find out, about gifts and interests and abilities and likes and dislikes and all those sorts of things, instead of just grouping people into one big category.
An illustration I think you used the last time you were on the show was, maybe you can review that with the viewers, about someone in a wheelchair in a restaurant.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the server comes up to a couple, and one uses the wheelchair, the other does not. Let's say it's the husband in the wheelchair. So the server says to the wife, well, what would you like? She says what she wants to eat, and then the server says to the wife, and what would he like? As if she's assuming that just because he uses a wheelchair, he can't hear, can't speak.
Right. Or if they do talk to him, what would you like?
Yeah,
right? They're talking.
Yeah. My predecessor, Jim Vanderlaan, who served as the Director of Disability Concerns very well and ably for 14 years, is blind. And he said he frequently had to remind people who shouted at him, my hearing is just fine. It's
So
my
sad.
vision that's the problem.
So sad.
Yeah.
But hey, we're all learning, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right. And accepting those who are different from us, whether that's race, whether that's sexual orientation, whether that's disabilities.
Right.
That's, it's a learning process to open our hearts to everyone, no matter what.
And that's what it takes in the church, is that realization that if we want to truly be the kind of body that Christ calls us to be, we keep on recognizing that hospitality,
keep opening
welcome is so important. Do you have time for another illustration?
Yes. In fact, let's wait for the illustration
All right.
till after the break.
Okay.
We'll be right back. You don't want to miss this.
Churches everywhere are discovering CBI's materials for their own small group studies. To order a curriculum catalog, contact us by visiting us at cbi.fm on the web or click the link to the online store.
Welcome back to Crossroad Connection. I'm speaking with my good friend Mark Stevenson, who's the Director of Disability Concerns. And the time has just flown by. We just have a few minutes yet, but we were ending the last segment with a story you had. Would you share that?
Yeah. In our own congregation, we were talking about hospitality and how do you make sure that you are forming the kind of community for people who know that they'll be welcome. So we have a friend who has fibromyalgia who goes to our church and has a hard time, and it's been a progressive illness which has created more and more challenge for her. So she knew that she would not be able to sit up for an entire worship service. So she asked us, could you bring in a bed for me? So my wife and I brought our air mattress and a comforter and so on, and she was so concerned. Well, what are people going to think of me? We just said, just come, because it had been like a month or two since she had been in worship before that.
This is the Crosswinds Church?
This is called Crosswinds Community Church in Holland, Michigan. So we brought in the mattress, and she came, and she was up and talked to people for a little while, mainly using a wheelchair. She lay down the mattress, and she was there for the worship service. Then it was time to go. And the only things that we heard from her and from other people was how good it was that she was there at worship. And what I thought is how wonderful it is that we can be part of a church where somebody can lay down on a mattress for a worship service and know that they are part of the community.
That is a beautiful, beautiful story. And again, it's a two-way benefit.
Absolutely.
And what a wonderful thing for the church. Because the church needs to open up. One of my favorite texts is Hebrews 13:3, where it says, "Show hospitality to strangers, because by so doing you may be entertaining angels unaware." Well, that word strangers, if you study it, it's those who are strange to us, those who are different.
Right.
And what that means is that, and as we talked about, our personal disabilities might seem different at first. But according to Scripture, these may be angels. I think they are, because angels are messengers from God, and we can learn something from God with people with disabilities.
Well, I agree with that. I want to expand on that and say, frankly, every single one of us is strange.
I'm strange.
And
just ask my wife.
If we didn't, as a church, make sure that she could feel welcome as she's laying on her bed.
Why should we be welcome?
Well, yeah, exactly. But then what happens is when we become the kind of community where folks can feel like they can come, and if they need to lay on a bed for the course of the worship service, they're welcome. That says to me, hey, if I have an issue, I'm still welcome here. I'm still welcome.
Well, we did get a chance to talk about prisoners and people in prison this time, but we'll save that for another time.
That'd be great.
This is so interesting to us because I said at the beginning of the program, most people in prison suffer from disabilities of some sort. Mm-hmm. A lot of that goes back to the 80s when government withdrew funds for mental institutions and so forth. Yeah. So the prisons have become mental institutions.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so this complicates or provides even more opportunities for returning citizens. They're coming back into the churches, not only as people who have been incarcerated, but also people with disabilities.
Many of them.
So we certainly believe that what you're doing is, we're partners.
Oh, yeah.
In what we're doing. We're trying to help people accept other people. 30 seconds, how can people get involved?
We invite people to look at our website, CRCNA, that's Christian Reformed Church North America, so crcna.org/disability.
That's on the screen.
Okay, and then also the blog, I write a blog, a weekly blog, that's network.crcna.org/disability.
That'll
so
be
those
on,
those two are the easiest
stuff.
ways to find, and then there's lots of resources. There's a way to sign up electronically for our newsletter, which just won an award, by the way. We can talk about that some other time too.
Oh, that's right.
Our newsletter,
Breaking Barriers. Can they get a hard
Barriers.
copy of your newsletter too? Can they get on a mailing list?
Oh, sure. We can mail it out to people. Just the email, contact information, all that information, phone numbers, they're all on the website.
Because my wife was just saying to me this morning, she says, she's my age, so young, but she said, when she gets an email newsletter, she doesn't really read it because she's used to using email for shorter stuff.
Right.
But when she gets a hard copy, at our age, you stop and you read it. So people may want to get on the mailing list and get that, and I highly recommend it. It's just a great thing.
Thank you.
And then also they can find resources then to help their churches.
Oh yeah, in the newsletter.
And resources maybe to help people who have family members with disabilities. Am I right?
Right. Yep. Can I give a phone number?
Give a phone number.
888-463-0272.
They can see that on the screen as well.
All
Mark,
right.
thank you so much once again for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
We've been talking with Rev Mark Stevenson, Director of Disability Concerns. Always a pleasure to have you, Mark. And so happy that you joined us, and hope that you'll be back to watch the program again next week.